Hello, everybody joining us live via Zoom as well as YouTube. A very good afternoon and a very warm welcome for today's session of ELSAConnect. For those of you joining us for the first time from within the ELSA community, and those of you who are not from the ELSA community, just to give you a quick introduction to ELSAConnect. It's an initiative of the Bangalore chapter of the LSR College Alumni Association. The forum was started in March 2020 when COVID suddenly hit us, and there was a nationwide lockdown. We were all in our homes, and there was fears and anxieties and worries. And we thought maybe we could get a forum together where all the ELSA community could come together and have a chat, discuss their fears and thoughts, and maybe feel a little better. The ELSAConnect forum has since come a long way. We've now been at it for 6 months. In fact, we've done 100 sessions. This is our 108th session. We've had our ELSA colleagues from around the world joining us, sharing their joys, experiences, challenges, fears in a very safe, warm, and very nurturing space. It's really come to, we've all come to enjoy this very unique space that we've created. Today's session, in fact, is even more special for two reasons. One, we're going to discuss issues related to emotional well-being, the very purpose for which ELSAConnect was set up. So it's extra special. And two, we are now experimenting with a panel format. We've done a few of these, and we hope to do more of these. What we realized was we had such a depth of experience and insights and knowledge amongst the ELSAs, that why not get them all together and have a well-rounded conversation around some of the issues that matter to us. So, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Ruchi, we can't hear you.
Can't hear.
Okay, let me invite Farah to take over. Ruchi, we can't hear you.
It's a great opportunity to have this panel and also, to discuss issues close to our hearts. So I'd really like Farah to come on and take on and introduce the panelists and commence the discussion. Over to you, Farah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ruchi. Good evening, everybody. So nice to see some familiar, some new faces here. Well, to get right to it, 10th October was Mental Health Awareness Day. And, like Ruchi said, that's exactly what we're here for. And, the whole idea is to increase talkability, to increase awareness and around mental health. So, today we have a panel from amongst us, 4 experts who are experts in their field. And before I introduce them, just a couple of lines about what we intend to talk about. World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So, what is mental health? Mental health is a condition with regard to emotional, psychological, and social well-being. In a society like India that is riddled with stigma against mental health, the backlash faced by people experiencing a mental health crisis is also great. If I were to quickly quote some statistics, which I'm sure all of you have heard, Nimmans has done a study which says that 1 in 10 Indians have a mental health condition and 1 in 20 Indians have depression. This is 2018, but I'm sure especially with COVID and the uncertainty that we've been in the last 6 to 8 months, I'm sure these numbers have gone up. There is a lot of feeling of shame, hopelessness, and isolation associated with mental health. There is a reluctance to ask for help and treatment. There is a lack of understanding by family, friends, and others, even workplace. There are fewer opportunities of interacting and talking about it openly. And there is, I think at the bottom of everything else, there is a feeling of self-doubt by the person that they will probably never be able to be okay. And conversations like this, where we attempt to break the silence, is just to tell you that it's okay not to be okay, and it's okay to talk about it. With that, I would like to introduce our first speaker for today. Dr. Anandita Bhattacharya has been teaching psychology at Azim Premji University for the last 7 years and is also coordinating activities for mental health and well-being center at the School of Arts and Science at the Azim Premji University. She's a licensed clinical psychologist and has been working in the field for almost 11 years now. Today, she talks about working towards a comprehensive model for mental health and well-being. Over to you, Anandita.
Thanks, Farah. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me here today. I'm really excited to be here. And thank you, Farah, for the lovely introduction and also for highlighting the situation of mental health in the country in the context of the pandemic. It's ironical that a small lethal virus has finally, made us pause and reflect and think about mental health so closely. Think about the need for such conversations, and I guess we'll have to look at the crisis as an opportunity to take a stock of what is happening to us, and taking stock of existing systems and what were the gaps there. So my talk today will be about that, to look at the existing system of mental health in a college setting, because my background has been in that. I have been associated with the college for a very long time. I've established a mental health center there. So I thought I'll share my experience about that with you all. I also sometimes wonder, why is it that we notice the gaps only when something extreme happens? And while I was consulting with a few premier institutes in Bangalore, I realized that, big institutes typically start thinking about wellness and mental health when there is a tragedy on campus. So when there's a self-harm attempt, or when there is something like a suicide which happens, and that's what make them, suddenly realize that it's important to talk about mental health. I wish that was not the case, but usually that's what happens. So that brings me to the basic definition and what Farha was earlier talking about, what really is mental health? How do we really look at mental health? Is it just the absence of an illness? Is it absence of sadness? Is it fair to look at it in a very categorical way and look at it in a, as a binary? Or is there a need for looking at a more nuanced definition of mental health? And like Farha said, WHO definition is quite broad in that sense, because it talks about mental health in a more holistic way. But I wanted to share with you people another very interesting model which I came across and which I've been using for my mental health center, which is called the dual continuum model of mental health. Let me just quickly share my screen so that you can see. Can you all see this? So this is the dual continuum model of mental health and mental illness. This was given by Corey Keyes, who has been working in the area of positive psychology for a very long time. And I have a background in positive psychology. So my PhD was in positive psychology, and that's when I came across this definition, which talks about two intersecting continuum, which are qualitatively very different. So while one part of the continuum talks about having symptoms of mental illness versus not having symptoms of mental illness, the other part of the continuum talks about having optimal mental health versus poor mental health. What this essentially indicates is that mental health should be seen more like a spectrum rather than a binary. And their definition of mental health is quite broad. It sort of covers a lot of different facets. And it's fascinating when, in some of these research work done, they show that there could be people who are flourishing, who are on the top of this mental health continuum. And, they may have certain symptoms of mental illness. That's all right. But they may be still doing really well emotionally, socially, psychologically. while there are other people who may not show any signs of mental illness, but they still may be languishing because they don't really have a lot of positive connections. They don't really have a sense of purpose in life. They're not really working towards their personal growth. So mental health was seen as something like this, where it covers a lot of different facets. And I found this very, very interesting and something which is meant for all of us. It shouldn't be that, we're talking about people out there who have symptoms of mental illness. I think mental health is for all of us. It's fundamental for all of us. And maybe this is a good way of looking at it. So the way they define mental health is, balance between emotions, thinking about one's personal growth, having positive relationships, having a sense of connection with the community, having a sense of environmental mastery. So whatever I do, I have the sense that I'm giving in my best. Also having some sort of a purpose or meaning in life and a sense of self-acceptance. So this kind of a definition, and these are the different facets given by Carol Riff when she was talking about psychological well-being. Again, another pioneer in the area of positive psychology. But they said that we should take into account both these continuums. We shouldn't really talk about just mental illness as somebody who doesn't really have a mental disorder. And that brings me to the next point where, when I was listening to Farha stating those statistics, I realized that these statistics give us a very good idea about the prevalence of mental illness. And they have exponentially increased after the pandemic. And there have been a lot of, incidents of suicide as well. But these stats don't give us a complete picture because they don't talk about people who have some optimal level of functioning. They don't talk about people who may not fall in the clinical category, but they may still have subclinical symptoms. And this I realized when I was doing my PhD from NIMHANS, and I did a survey on almost 800 students across Bangalore. And we had given them a very simple scale out of all the other things which were in that survey. There was this small Likert scale where 0 was not at all distressed and 10 was highly distressed. And we realized that almost 20 to 40% of college students reported feeling highly distressed. And these are people who also have a silent burden because they're not able to talk about it. They're not formally diagnosed, but they also fall through the gaps, and there are not enough safety nets in place to make these people feel supported. So from there, I would like to talk about my own experience of establishing the mental health center at APU. So I have had a very traditional training in mental health institutes, and people come there for help either because they have already broken the barrier to seek help, or because the symptoms are so severe that they warrant a treatment immediately. But when I was given the daunting task of establishing a mental health center from scratch at APU, I realized it's not that easy. It's not like you will establish a center. I gave it a very nice neutral name called Mindspace. And I thought people will start walking in, people who are distressed will come in and seek help. But I realize it's not that simple. People who really need help actually also struggle with a lot of stigma, which we are all aware about. It's also that the role of the center shouldn't just be, being in a silo, expecting people to turn up. In fact, we had to reach out to the community, talk about mental health in a broader sense, to make sure that everybody in the community feels a part of these discussions. They don't feel like this happens to somebody else. They should feel like this could happen to any one of us. And there I gradually realized that using a public mental health model seems more relevant in a college context. College students also are in a very, very vulnerable developmental stage because all of us know, it's a transition stage where they are separating and individuating from their families. They are forging new identities. there is also a lot of peer pressure. There's also this need to experiment with things, sometimes which get really risky. Also, college students form a lot of intimate relationships. And this is also a period where almost 75% of mental illness have a very early onset. So 75% of mental illness start by the age of 25. And if we don't intervene early, then there's a chance that it will become chronic later on. So this is a very, very vulnerable group. This is also a group which needs a lot of attention and support. And it's important that if we are creating systems in a campus, the responsibility of someone's mental health doesn't fall on that person. So it shouldn't be something which is very personal. It shouldn't be something which is the responsibility of the counseling center. But it's important that the whole campus creates a culture of openness, trust, connection. And I just wanted to show you people this slide quickly to show that we can do a lot of things at different levels and attend to the need of the community at various levels. And I would like to end with a quote which I recently came across, and I'm sure all of you must have seen this. This is by Margaret Mead, the anthropologist, who was asked by a student what she considered to be the first sign of civilization in a culture. The student expected Mead to talk about fish hooks or clay pots or grinding stones. But no, Mead said that the first sign of civilization in an ancient culture was a femur or a thigh bone that had been broken and then healed. She explained that in the animal kingdom, if you break your leg, it's really difficult to survive because you can't reach water sources. But a broken femur that has healed is evidence that someone has taken time to stay with the one who fell, has bound up the wound, and has carried the person to safety and has tended to the person through recovery. So I would just like to end with that note, that helping someone else through difficulty is where civilization starts. And maybe it's high time that we also start thinking about mental health from a community context and not just from a recovery model where the focus is on somebody recovering and giving them just mental health services. Thank you.
Thank you, Anandita. Thank you. Our next speaker is Kiran Bhatia, a familiar face in ELSA. Kiran is a trained social worker and development professional with 40 years of international experience. She's worked extensively on gender equality and social inclusion, women and children's rights, and protection from violence and harmful practices for organizations across the regions. Kiran was instrumental in setting up Sanjeevani Mental Health, a pioneer mental health NGO in New Delhi. Today, Kiran is going to talk about the shadow pandemic. How can women and children be safe? Over to you, Kiran.
Thank you very much, Farah. And thank you, Elsa. It's familiar territory. It's wonderful to be back with this very caring, warm, welcoming group. And I've been absolutely amazed since I returned to Bangalore to see the number of events and the diversity and the openness to explore areas. So it's a real honor to be here today, also with the three other panelists. I'm not sure if I'm an equivalent mental health expert as they are, but I'm very happy to share my experience. In the few minutes I have, I'm going to take your minds and your energy to half the world's population, which is women and girls. Isn't it surprising that today, because of statistics and data, and I'm going to share some other set of statistics with you, which are going to build on the ones Farah shared, which are directly linked to mental health. And that's the mental health of women and girls. And why do we need to look at that? Not just in the pandemic, but let's go to before the pandemic, when life was supposedly normal. WHO did research across hundreds of countries, and it took them almost 20 years to gather a data that is now irrefutable, which tells us that 1 in 3 women in their lifetime, in their adult lifetime, which is from 15 to 49, have experienced some form of violence in their life. Close your eyes and think about that for a moment. 1 in 3 women, how many are we here right now? We are 31 women. So sometime in our life, we have experienced some form of discrimination, abuse, some form of violence. And violence here, talking of definitions, we're not speaking about a slap on the face, which is the most common visual of violence against women. It's much deeper and much broader. There's physical violence, there's sexual violence, there's psychological violence, there's economic violence, there's social violence. There's so many types of violence that women contend with in every day of their life, and which directly, completely, and almost in a life-threatening way damages their mental health. So we really can't separate their well-being, if they're still alive, from their mental health. And that's why I thought it was important to share and take this discussion between us as we look at other aspects of mental health. So if 1 in 3 women face violence, did we know that the number of women who have experienced intimate partner violence is 42%, and that the largest number of homicides that happen against women are from their own partners. So the very people who are to protect you, who are there to help you build your well-being and your mental health, are the ones who inflict injury on you, often kill you. And there's also the health consequences of violence, which again have a long-term impact on the mental health of not just the woman, but the immediate family, her children, the community, and the whole country. We have incredible studies which give us some shocking insights. For example, did you know that in a violent home, a boy who grows up in a home where there's violence has 4 times the possibility of growing up to be violent himself? Knowing this, how is this going to affect this child's mental health, and what kind of an adult is he going to be in terms of his coping mechanisms and his attitude towards violence? If 1 billion women are facing this form of violence, there is a 2-fold increase in the number of anxiety and depression and suicide amongst women because of the violence they're facing, because they're trapped in homes where they're not safe. So imagine, with the poor mental health facilities we have at the moment, the world over, 1 in 5 people need mental health help. And in India, as Farah said, our statistics are really, really sad, because 83% of people who need mental health services are not able to get them, because we don't have enough mental health professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, and nurses. We don't have facilities. But most of all, we have an enormous mental stigma, as has been mentioned, about reaching out for help. So for women and children, and especially women and girls, the stigma around violence prevents them from speaking about their mental health traumas. They're completely traumatized. We have the 3rd highest rate of suicide in the world. And out of that, it is young women who are contributing in very large numbers to this suicide. I want to talk a bit about what's happening during the pandemic. Did you know that the number of cases that have reached out to the National Women's Commission during the months of March to May have doubled? Have doubled because women are trapped in homes. And I think it's important for us to recognize the underlying unequal gender relations, the patriarchal systems and structures which dictate how you should live, what you should eat, what you can wear, where you can go, who you can speak to, how much you should study. In fact, whether you may be born or not. 45 million girls in our country have not been born. What can be the mental health status of her mother, where she was forced to have repeated abortions because of son preference, where she was thrown out of her home because she can't bear a son, when, as you know, scientifically, it has absolutely nothing to do with her. So the mental health trauma that women experience is triple-fold. They have a higher work burden in their home, which is unequal, unrecognized, and unpaid. In our labor force, women do far more work, but it's only 20% that is recognized in the official formal labor circle. They do the caregiving for the elderly, for children. When patriarchy has brainwashed men and women to believe that this is women's role. We know that apart from giving birth and breastfeeding, any human being can do any task in terms of child rearing, caring, cooking, cleaning. The list is never ending. But even women are very deeply steeped in patriarchal attitudes, and we contribute strongly to rebuilding these attitudes in our sons. And it is today the largest virus we have to deal with. In the pandemic, we have so many more women who are affected, whose mental health is affected, who are breaking down because they simply can't cope with everybody being at home, with the increase in work, with the increase in violence, with the demand from children where they're unable to share the burden due to unwritten norms and structures that dictate how they should be and what they must do. For girls, it's equally bad. As many of you know, girls are the first ones to be pulled in to help with the domestic work. The rate of child marriage in India has shot up in the last year during the pandemic, especially in the last 6 months. Sexual abuse against girls because they're trapped in homes, cases of incest have increased. Cases of girls being abducted and sold have increased. What can be the state of their mental health? I'd like you to reflect on that for a moment. So when we say mental well-being, we do need to look at the different social structures, the unequal structured relations and possibilities that we have, and who is worst off. And what can we do for that worst off person? A Dalit woman is worse off than a woman who lives in an urban family and has some access to resources. So it's not that all women are the same. Our social exclusion factors contribute another layer of discrimination to access to services and to information. To many of the women who reached out to us in their despair when they've not been able to cope, to our helplines, I'm talking about helplines in Nepal and helplines in India where I've been involved, the first cry for help is someone to listen to them, is to have the courage to speak, is to have the courage to voice what they have been through, because they're unable to do that with anybody. So the first thing we can all do to contribute to improve mental health, not just for women, but for ourselves as well, is practicing empathy. Empathy is a magic wand. It's a magic bullet. It always works. And it's not rocket science. We can learn to be empathetic and be there for other women. And we can also learn basic information to help women who are unable to help themselves due to the violence and their current mental health state of severe depression, of trauma, of PTSD, of anxiety, of strong suicidal ideation, of having run away and not knowing where to go. We can learn how to listen and be empathetic. We can learn where we can refer them. We can learn how to give them information about how to be safe. Keep your things with you. Train the children where to reach out for help. Help them look at options that are available. This any one of us can do. So whether it's Anandita in her college, where so many girls may be facing trauma at home or their mothers, or it's our neighbors, our work colleagues, people in our family, we have no excuse not to know what to do. So my request to all of you in terms of our contribution as responsible women is, what can we do to be aware, to offer this to others, to make sure that their mental health needs are met before they break down, before we have another suicide attempt, another rape, another person on the street who's abducted, or another person who is unable to maintain a relationship. And I think my time is up. I want to mention a wonderful example I saw of a professor in Stanford University. And he started a challenge. And the challenge is, he says, you go to the gym every day. You're so caught up in looking after your body, especially during lockdown, right? You're exercising, you're doing pranayama, yoga, etc. He says, can you go to an empathy gym? Give yourself a daily challenge of empathy. Find an empathy gym for yourself, because that tool is going to help strengthen your mental health, plus make you a very valuable person to contribute to others' mental health around you. And there's nothing we need more at this time when the pandemic is simply not finishing. And we know that 1 in 5 people are facing enormous mental health problems. From those 1 in 5, we also know that at least 3 of them are women. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiran. Your talk was a little grim, but it is our reality, unfortunately. But I really like the beautiful thing you said, that empathy is like a magic wand. It really is. With that, we have our next speaker, Maulika Sharma. Maulika is the Director for Global Clinical Infrastructure with Workplace Options, a global company offering employee assistance programs. Outside of her job, Maulika does counseling for adolescents and adults and is a regular writer on topics related to mental health. She also has a column in Deccan Herald where she answers questions raised by young adults. Today, Maulika is going to talk about a very interesting thing, How balanced is your seesaw? Over to you, Malika.
Thanks, Farah, and thanks to ELSAConnect for organizing this session. And thanks, Kiran, for your really sobering talk. I love the idea of the empathy gym. It's something that we can all instantly take away. Can you hear me? Okay. I've often been asked, or not often, but I was recently asked, what's the one thing that you think is, what's the most often, what's the problem that comes to you the most often, and what do you think is the cause? And I thought about it, and then I realized that actually the most common thing that comes in the counseling room is really a lack of self-esteem. And that sort of results in anxiety, in depression, in stress, in not knowing how to deal with relationships. Encourages one to be subservient or never question the norms. And I started out my career as a school counselor, and while there, one day I had this epiphany, and it was a metaphor that kind of came to me, and I have used it all these years, almost 10 years, and I have always found that it sort of drives home the point really instantly. And I thought that was something I would share in this room, because it's sort of like a mental tool that each one of us can carry with us and use in our day-to-day interactions, and also help our kids and others maybe relate to that. So this is, if all of you can see this, this is like a little wooden seesaw from my daughter's doll's house when she was tiny. And I believe that, if the seesaw represents the relationship between two people, the seesaw should be horizontal, whether it's you and your classmates, whether it's you and your siblings, whether it's you and your partner, friends, whatever. Both people should think and feel that they are equally important in that relationship. The moment one person thinks that I'm not good enough, the other person is better than me, more powerful than me, that side of the seesaw goes down. And the other side of the seesaw automatically goes up. So there's nothing that this person sitting here did to go up, and nor is there anything that this person sitting there can do to come down. Neither can, this person cannot come down unless the person sitting here kicks the ground and raises themselves up. And the moment the person who is low on self-esteem kind of tries to be in touch with their worth and recognize themselves as an equal player in that relationship, the seesaw gets balanced out. And this kind of, you can relate it to whether it's your kids with their peers and they're feeling, uncomfortable with in their peer relationships, whether it's you with your spouse, whether it's you with your siblings. It's, how balanced is your seesaw? The moment you kind of think that I'm not good enough, or that, I'm the lower gender, I'm the younger kid, anything that sort of makes you feel that the other person is bigger or better than you. We often believe that, what can I do? He is saying this or she's saying that, and this is the person sitting here. But really, this person can't come down unless this person kicks the ground and goes up. So while we tend to sort of tell ourselves that the control lies here, the control actually lies here. And the moment I realize that this is something in my control, I can do something about it. Otherwise, I tend to feel that I'm helpless. What should I do? That person is so much better than me. He's saying this. What can I do about it? But if I believe that I'm an equal player in this relationship, I can question what he's saying. And the moment I question what he's saying, I take back that control in my hand. I have balanced my seesaw, and that, that dynamic that I had in my communication and my interactions changes. So while I can't change what he is saying and doing, I can change what I am saying and doing, and I can change what I am saying and thinking and believing, and that will change the equilibrium. So that's all I wanted to leave you all with, just something to think about.
Wow, thank you, Malika. That was brief yet impactful. I think the analogy will and the visual would sit with everyone. The next time they find themselves in a place of imbalance. Our last speaker for today is Malika. You're saying something. You're on mute.
Sorry, I said I think that's something you can always use to explain to your kids as well when they're struggling with peer relationships.
Absolutely, yes, yeah, you're right. You're right. Our last speaker for today is Meera Alva. Meera is a consultant psychotherapist with over 17 years of experience as a consultant therapist working in schools, colleges, and in private practice. Post her MA in psychology from Delhi University, she did her postgraduate training in family therapy from King's College in London and in the management of learning disabilities from SNDT in Mumbai. She has recently co-authored a book on young mental health, which she's really proud of, and you should send us the link, and we're going to make an attempt to buy it, and is now pursuing a PhD from Christ University. Today, Meera is going to talk about self-care in the time of the pandemic. Over to you, Meera.
Thank you very much, Farah. It's lovely to be here, the ELSA Talks, and thank you, Malika, for that lovely talk on, I think that was a very powerful metaphor that you shared with us. Thanks for that. So I'm going to share my screen because I have a PPT that I'd like to share with you. Can you see it? Farah, can you see my PPT? No.
Not yet.
No? Okay. So I'm sharing my screen and it's somehow not allowing me to do that. So can you share it, Farah? Would that be possible? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Is it okay?
I think it's still taking a few minutes to start.
Not visible yet, but it's, yeah.
Not yet come on, yeah. So just give it a few minutes and then Farah, if you can just help me change the slides.
There's a question that has come up for Ruchi. Ruchi has asked a question to Kiran, which is that are there any organizations in Bangalore where one can volunteer to work with women in need? Kiran, you're on mute.
Should I answer it now?
Yes, please. Yeah, while we wait.
I actually put the answer in saying that there are several. I'm happy to share the list. I wrote a response in the chat, but I did clarify that if you want to help with responding to women who have experienced violence, you need to go through training, which most of these organizations provide. I'm very happy for anyone to connect with me and to help them discuss this further. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Kiran. Can you see the PPT now, Meera?
Yeah, I can see the PPT.
Okay.
Can you all see it as well?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Thank you for that, Farah. I'm going to need your help with changing the slides. So my talk, yeah.
No problem.
Okay, sure. Thanks. So thank you for having me. And this is a wonderful opportunity and an honor to be here. I'm going to be talking about self-care in the times of the pandemic. Farah, can you just go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So I like this quote very much. It says, being kind to yourself is one of the greatest kindnesses, said the mole. It's from a book, lovely book. The reason that I chose, I'll just get to that for a minute. So the reason that I chose this topic today is that I was questioning my own quality of self-care in these past few months, when the pandemic hit us, and I found myself trying to juggle too many things. And I saw that this was common around me, especially with women, trying to be multitasking, pushing yourself, extending yourself to all the possible limits that you can. And there is a risk, although there is as much strength and resilience in that, and that we all possess, but there is also a great risk and danger. And that is the neglect of something very fundamental, which is our self-care. So Farah, the next slide, please. So what is self-care? So it's any activity that we do deliberately in order to take care of our mental, emotional, and physical health. So the important thing is here, the deliberately, that word. It's the intention. So doing activities that bring the intention of taking care of ourselves. Next slide, please. Part of the next slide, can you change it? Yeah. So I want to start just with the perspective of this pandemic. So this pandemic is unlike anything we've ever experienced, right? We have no collective resources, no information to access. There's like constant anxiety and fear surrounding us. And we're just really trying to really figure this out every day. It's like almost like the day-to-day kind of figuring out what's going on and trying to keep sane. Next slide, please. Is it moving to the next slide? Okay, I think the internet is slow. Yeah, okay, that's okay. I think you skipped a slide. You can go to the previous one, please. Yeah, no problem. So in the context of this pandemic and this perspective of how things are so scary and uncertain and kind of unpredictable, what is important is the permission that we need to give ourselves. And like, pre-pandemic, and this was difficult even pre-pandemic, I think self-care is often seen as an indulgence, a luxury, something that is, selfish. You feel guilty about caring for yourself. There's this notion that others are more important. It's almost like internalized. It's almost like it's internalized, the sense of the other being more important. And also this question of, can we even afford to do self-care? And this is not just in the financial sense of spending that money on or that gift or that thing for yourself or a spa treatment, but just that, will my kids be okay if I take that time off? So this is something that I wanted to talk about, that there is sort of a block when it comes to self-care. Next slide, please. Yeah. And it's all the more important now to give ourselves this permission more than ever. And that's because there's a little image there in my slide of this matchstick burning out. And that's what's going to happen. If we neglect our self-care, we are going to have a burnout. And small things will start feeling overwhelming. There'll be sort of an increase in our anxiety, our irritability, anger. And if you're not in touch with those feelings, you're probably disconnecting from yourself as well. So there's probably you neglecting your needs. And even then, if you do all of that, your body is going to tell you. It's going to tell you that it's not feeling okay. There's going to be physical depletion. You're going to feel fatigued. There's going to be aches and pains, God forbid, weight gain or sleep disturbances. So your body will tell you. So that is going to be one of the physical and psychological signs that you will have to deal with if you were not to give yourself permission right now at this very, very critical time. Next slide, please. I love this image of, watering yourself. It's like very nurturing. And it's also woman, because we're a community of women. I think it's so important to think about how is it that we can do self-care. Next slide, please. So first thing I'd like to start with is the physical aspect. I'm going to just say basic things, but they're fundamental. I think we cannot compromise, or it's non-negotiable when it comes to the basics. So things like your eating, your sleeping, and your exercising is fundamental and like the foundation of your self-care. Certain other things you can do for your physical health is to maybe just draw like a physical boundary around yourself where you take some time off, like physically, you move away, you have a sort of a space for yourself. And another thing that also helps is doing like a body scan. I like doing that. You could do it in your shower, on the pot, while you're lying in bed, just checking with your body, see how you're feeling, how your shoulders are feeling, how your stomach's feeling. Just get in touch and just connect with your body as and when you can. I think we need to get really creative in terms of how can we pause our on button, in this whole other care and self-care. There's this constant juggling of having to care for the other. I think we need to get really creative and find interesting and meaningful ways to press that pause and say, it's time to pause now. It's time for me to care for myself. Next slide, please. And so when we look at pointers in terms of the psychological aspects, there's no one size fits all, it's subjective. However, there are certain things that can be quite helpful in terms of, kind of putting yourself first, prioritizing, feel your feelings. I think there's a lot of grief, sense of loss, of this normalcy that we've, really lost it, not knowing when it's going to return. So I think all of these feelings are welcome, and spending time alone is important, asking for what you need, saying no. It's very critical to say no to that extra thing that needs to be done, a chore or an assignment. So I think saying no is really important. Cutting yourself some slack. I think it's okay to be good enough right now. You don't have to aim for excellence and I'm going to do this and perfection. And so I think cutting yourself slack is really important. And last but not the least, and it cannot be overemphasized, I think limiting your social media consumption. It really messes with you. It really drains you. And we need to be disciplined. I somehow feel you have to almost sort of make that a part of your routine in terms of how you limit what you're consuming in terms of the social media. Next slide. So I was, trying to list out symptoms to watch out for professional help. And I thought, no, you don't have to have a breakdown, or you don't have to stop functioning or start feeling all these symptoms to actually get help. Please get help if you feel the need. Do not hesitate. Do not think twice. Reach out and get help. Next slide, please. And if you need professional help, please do not contact me. That is my self-care. I have struggled with this, jokes apart. I have, had a problem saying no to referrals when things were getting really sort of difficult and challenging. And that's one of the things that I've decided, at least till the end of the year, I'm not going to take on any new referrals. So that's been a part of my professional protocol for self-care. However, I would like to share, I have some contacts which I'm happy to sort of pass around. There's some helplines and counseling contacts here. Farah, if you could just go to the next slide. These things I can, again, share as a resource. I have some, again, articles. And the next slide, please. This is basically online resources, which are very, very useful. Somatic exercises that you can do. I love mindfulness-based meditations. They're really brief, 5 to 10 minute ones that you can do just to kind of center yourself. And imagery exercises are wonderful. Please do try them. I highly recommend them. And the last slide, please. So I come to the end of it all. Wish you all good self-care, and thank you for listening to me. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Meera. I don't know about the others, but there was a lot for me to take away from that. Thank you. I would like to, at this point, invite Champa to announce the next session before we get into the questions and answers.
Hello, everyone. That was one hell of a session, as one would say. So much to take away, so much of a real import over there, not only for all of us, but for others that we can take it to. So a big thank you to Farah and to all the panelists. Awesome. And I am delighted to invite all of you and others who couldn't make it today to Tuesday, coming Tuesday for same ELSAConnect time. We are going to have a very intimate chat with one of our ELSA mates.
He just woke up. And I told you to take this out for him and take the chocolate out. Those are the two things.
You will see that how intimate and entertaining is that. So that's probably what's going to happen on Tuesday 20th when we get to meet our college mate Revati Suresh. She is a course mate of mine. We were together in LSR. And so we're going to reminisce, bring back some very interesting times that we had, and a little story, interesting story, the journey of our lives. So please be there to say hello and listen to what Reva has to say on Tuesday, the 20th. See all of you there and drag along the others who couldn't make it today. Thank you so much. And can I request now Vandana to come and take over with the next announcement, please?
Yes, thank you so much, Champa. Hi, everyone, and thank you to all the wonderful panelists today. Of course, formal thank yous will come from Farah after the question answers. So a quick announcement, 24th of October, same time, 4 o'clock, which is next Saturday actually. We have Pinky Anand, our Elsa, who's Additional Solicitor General of India. She, after LSR, is an INLAC scholar and went to Harvard School of Law and also did her doctorate, and is a very known face, not only in law circles, but even otherwise. So I'd like to invite, it's a pan-ELSA session, so ELSA is worldwide. Please do register. Registration link will be out very shortly. And the rest of you watch on YouTube. Links will all be there. We look forward to having all of you with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Vandana. So now I would like to now invite questions for our panel, for our speakers. There are a few that I have received. I'll just talk about them. If you do have, if something that has been spoken about has, it struck a chord, it's resonated with you in a way that, you would like to take up privately with someone, you can put that in chat, and we'll be mindful about the confidentiality and not disclose your name. Other questions, please feel free to please switch on your video and ask the questions directly. Yeah, I did receive a question about, I think I would like Anandita to answer this. There was a question, there was a query about a term Ishita has heard recently called toxic positivity. Would you like to throw some light on this, Anandita?
Yeah, I think toxic positivity. Yeah, Ishita, would you like to see what you have read?
I will just unmute her 1 second.
Yeah.
Ishita, 1 minute. I'm not muted. Sandhya, I'll need help. She's not getting unmuted. Thank you.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So hi, Anandita. It's nice to see you here. I think I met you very briefly at Namma Elsa. So I was very impressive. Your talk was. So, I recently read this term called toxic positivity, and I tend to see it around me where people are actually shoving their issues under the carpet, in want of a better word, and they have this, everything's fine. And so, in this, so it's kind of contradictory to this whole issue of addressing mental health. If you are going to wish it away or shove it under the carpet. So this term was used, I don't remember where I saw it, but in one of these articles or whatever. And I also keep reading on the phone, so I don't know where I read it. But so can you if you have heard this term, which I'm sure all of you have, how is it different from being fake? And so everyone says put on a brave front and don't whatever. But if you keep swallowing that sort of thing that is bothering you, not addressing it, does it become toxic? What is toxic positivity? I'm trying to, because very often, we just say, no, let's just keep the peace. And, can you answer that?
Yeah, Ishita. Yeah, I think that's a really relevant question, because a lot of time, in the field of positive psychology, criticism is it happyology? Is it promoting a lot of positivity when one should actually confront their problems and issues? So the question of toxic positivity arises there, which is seen as a way of denying what is happening to you. And there's an overemphasis on, having a positive mindset. So a lot of pressure from others to think positively, act happy even when you're sad, behave in a way which is not authentic. So toxic positivity is when you're not being authentic to your own self, when you're overemphasizing on something which you don't feel like. So you don't feel like being positive in a situation, for example, the current corona situation where so much is happening. And there are days when you won't feel positive at all. So this pressure of behaving in a particular way, which is not you, in some sense, sort of gives us an indication of toxic positivity. But a way to respond to it would be to have a balance, to realize that it's important for us to feel what is going on and be aware of it, be very conscious of it, and not try to feel something which is not genuine.
So, yeah, so I think the fear is of isolation. So, if I'm feeling toxic and if I add negative, or if I not act, if I behave the way I'm feeling, people are going to drop me. Oh God, like, who's going to sit with her? All she talks about is her problems. But, isn't that also a part of, what should I say? Isn't that also, like you said, civilized? I love that term where you said the highest form of civilization is being there. But, there is a huge lack of people who want to be there for you when you are really, really down. It's so, and so therefore you want to put on this brave front and, oh, I'm so happy and I'm so cheerful and I'm all the time jumpy. Are you getting where I am coming from? So how does one deal with this? Because I see that all around.
Yeah, Shudha, but I feel, when you put out a brave front, there's also part of you which wants to be like that versus toxic positivity to some extent, right? Where you don't feel brave enough, but still you have to act in a way where you're acting happy. But if you're putting a brave front and you say, I'm not feeling good today, but I'll try to still find some sort of a meaning, purpose, I'll still try to reach out to people, I still try to engage productively, and all the things which Meera was mentioning earlier, that I would try to take care of myself, then it becomes more like a balance, where you're addressing your problem and you're also doing something about it. But I think toxic positivity is when there is too much emphasis on being something which you are not, being too positive, and constantly be under this this pressure of being productive, being extremely doing things which are very, very worthwhile when you don't feel like doing it. So I
You
hope I
say
could
that this whole
answer.
social media thing is promoting toxic positivity? Anindita?
Yeah. Social media, yes, to a large extent it is, because we only see one side of the story and we don't see the struggles people are going through. So, in that sense, Monica, you're right that social media sort of shows us a very skewed picture of what life is like. And people try to show a lot of things which are happening in their lives, but they don't show the other side where they're actually struggling. So, in that sense, it's not very balanced.
Can I add something here?
Actually, Kakli, before you do, I'd like to formally introduce you. So today we were supposed to have a fifth speaker with us, but Kakli had a personal, Dr. Kakli Gupta had a personal emergency because of which she couldn't be a speaker, but she at least was gracious enough to, participate, be a part of the talk today. So Kakli holds a doctorate in clinical psychology from California, USA, and she and her team provide psychotherapy, counseling, and assessment services to children, adolescents, adults, and couples in Bangalore. And Kakli was going to talk today about parental attunement. I would like Kakli to come in and just say a few words.
Thank you, Farah. Sorry for, thank you so much. That's very kind of you for giving the introductions. I just wanted to comment on the, toxic positivity, because I think it's a very, very relevant struggle, because I think toxic positivity in some ways actually the opposite of empathy, right? So let's say if a friend is down, or let's say a child at home is feeling low, and I go and say, oh, come on, feel better, come on, be positive. What have I done? I have actually left that person alone in their sadness. Yeah? Instead of actually getting them, instead of me empathizing with their sadness and be able to say, yeah, this is hard, I actually go and say, come on, don't feel what you're feeling. And I need you to be happy, and come on, be positive. And of course, Facebook, social media, it's just promoting that kind of culture where happiness is overrated, right? I mean, human life, mental health, as many of the presenters were talking, it's not about being happy. It's about being able to feel all your emotions. It's about having access to a whole lot of feelings, right? It's not just about happiness. And in human life, it's not going to be possible to just always be happy. And especially, I think, during pandemic, and what I wanted to talk about earlier was just that even with children, a lot of children are being told right now, it's okay, see, but we try to show them positives, but do we make room for them to grieve what they have lost? Do we make room for, a friend who's down and say, it's okay, I can be with you in your sadness, versus, no, I can't be with your sadness because I need you to be positive. I think it's the opposite of empathy. It makes people more lonely. And perhaps a lot of what is happening in our world right now, there's more loneliness because we need the world to be a happy place only.
Yeah, thanks, Kakli. There's another question that has come in from Tanya. Tanya, would you like to ask the question?
Thank you, Farah. And I'm very sorry I can't put on my camera. It's just not working. I can't just start it. So my question is, how does one recognize emotional abuse? So physical abuse or sexual abuse is very visible. We know what it is. But sometimes emotional abuse is not just from partner, from friends, from anybody. How does one recognize it and how does one deal with it? Any clear markers for that?
Shall I respond to that?
Yes.
Thank you for that question, Tanya. And it's a really good question because very often people are so conditioned with what violence is. And as you said, the physical violence is visible, but the emotional is not. And there are actually very clear indicators which can help you recognize that. It's harder, but humiliation, demeaning, putting you down in front of others, being abusive, sometimes passive aggressive, uh, basically challenging you and whittling away at your confidence. There's a lot of very specific, small and large actions that build up. And in the cycle of violence, emotional violence is often the one that's the hardest to catch, because if you study the cycle of violence, it really shows you how there is emotional abuse, and then there's what you call the honeymoon phase, where the person apologizes and said, oh, I didn't mean to do that, and gives you a lot of appreciation, and you think, oh, it was just a passing thing, and then it comes again and it's worse. So it's ever present, unlike physical violence, which happens also very frequently for some, but it often happens sporadically. But emotional violence continues. It's often non-verbal. And so you feel it more, and it's harder to verbalize it because you can't get a grasp on it. And that's why many people don't believe women when they report emotional violence, because they haven't seen it. She looks fine, but she's completely finished inside. She's lost her self-confidence. She's not sleeping. Her mental health is deeply affected. So yeah, I think it's good to read about that. It's easy to see clear signs. We have very clear indications for physical, social, emotional, and economic violence now, very well spelled out. So it's easy to read, and then you say, aha, I understand now. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, kind of. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kiran.
Anya, I just put a link in the chat of a recording on what is emotional abuse and how do you recognize it. So if you want to know more about it, you can.
I will. I'll read it. Thank you, Malika.
Do we have any more questions? If there are, questions that come after this conversation is over, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to kind of answer them for you. Mental health is something common for everyone, just like our physical health. And during our lifetime, not everyone will experience a mental illness, but everyone will struggle to have a challenge with mental health at some point. I'm sure all of us have been through various of those. And, just like we do with physical well-being from time to time. But the idea is that with the right tools and support and talkability and awareness, this too can be dealt with just like any other physical ailment.
Okay.
So with that, I would like to end today's session. Thank you so much. Thank you to all our speakers for taking out time from their busy schedules. It was tough to get everybody to come, but thank you so very much for taking out this time and, in helping spread